Thanks for joining us on the second quarterly webinar that are required for our Rethinking Job Search facilitators. We do these to provide some training opportunities and also a chance to connect with each other a little face-to-face in our best way, since we are throughout the state, and this is the best way that we have at this point to connect with each other. Hi, Sherry, did you just join us?
Hi, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. No problem. So I wanted to start out with a couple of introductions. So maybe let's go ahead and everyone say their name. If you don't have access to a microphone, just go ahead and type it into the chat box. And we'll just make sure everyone's here. So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Chelsea Chase from Morgan City's here.
Arnie Fordham from Bend is here.
We have Sherry that just wrote in. And Sherry's with Portland and Southeast Works.
Susan Barksdale from Salem.
And Meredith is not going to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say Nancy from Public Policy Associates is here.
All right, I think that's everyone. Meredith isn't able to join us today. And Nancy, for your information, neither is Lane Workforce Partnership. They were planning to be on this call because they are currently not, they don't have a facilitator right now for their region, but they're working on getting that set up. So thanks everyone for being here. I am excited about today's presentation because this is a part of the project that's a really important piece that we haven't connected with the facilitators, at least on a real in-depth level. So I'm really excited about this piece because it's the part that's going to allow us, for the most part, to make this project sustainable for our job seekers. So as we are implementing Rethinking Job Search and we're seeing results, firsthand, the evaluation is what's going to give us some data to take to decision makers, to take to funders, to say this is a project worth funding. So we are really excited about this. And Nancy McCrone on the call is somebody that we've been working with for about a year now. So she's been a partner of ours since January of last year. And we've had a fantastic relationship with her and Public Policy Associates. Colleen Graber is another partner that is a staff person of Public Policy Associates that we are connected with. So I thank you very much for being on the call, Nancy, and for presenting with us. I know that the facilitators are really excited to hear about the evaluation, and so are we. All right, so I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Hey, well, thank you, Jen. I appreciate that introduction. We here at Public Policy Associates have really enjoyed working with people at Insight. So I'm very excited to be here on the webinar to talk to real live facilitators and workforce people. So this is good. Basically, what I want to impart today is I have some goals for the webinar, but I just want to say overall, we're kind of the partner you don't know about. We are a full partner in your project, and I'm excited to have a chance for us to connect a little more. What I want to talk about today is I want to give you an overview of the evaluation plan, and I have some preliminary feedback from the participants from their workshop input, so that's going to be really interesting, and just have a chance to talk to you, have your questions answered, and talk to you about what to expect in the future. So I do have one question. Jennifer, maybe you can help me with this. Can you hear me okay?
That's a great question. I was going to say, if it's possible, maybe move the phone closer to you, and it might help.
Okay. I will speak up. And I'll crank up the volume here. So how's that?
That is better. But yes, pick up where you can.
Okay. So I just want to give you the big picture is with this evaluation, we are coming in and looking at it from several perspectives. One is cost, and now there is what we call summative, but that's simply jargon for what are the outcomes, what are the results. And the other piece is more formative, and that piece I think is the piece you'll probably be most interested in. That really speaks to how the process is unfolding and what you're learning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those. I'm going to actually start with the cost because I think you probably don't want to know that much detail, and that's I'm starting from the back. So in the back, we're going to do the cost, move forward into the future. So with the cost, our real emphasis is on looking at essentially rethinking. Oh, I'm so sorry, I put RJS in there. I meant to say rethinking. We don't say RJS as a project. I distracted myself with that. I apologize. So the cost study, basically, we're trying to look at the big picture. The program is looking at, how do we reduce per participant cost compared to what would ordinarily happen and what happens to job seekers who are getting unemployment insurance. So that's the big picture piece of the cost. And the way we're doing that, we actually have several research questions we use to frame how what we're asking and what we're going to learn about. So I'm not going to give you all the research questions because that would be a lot. But just briefly in cost, we are asking, is the intervention more cost effective than what you would normally expect from traditional work? We'll be asking things like, what are the resource and policy implications of sustaining the cost? And then how we get at that is we'll do a cost effectiveness analysis. There's many types of cost studies. The way we're approaching it is cost effectiveness, where we look at both the direct and indirect costs from the UI office and workforce perspective. And then we compare that to the outcomes of employment, retention, and reduced UI use. So really, we're looking at this from the perspective of the workforce system. Like, how is this? How are the outcomes valuable relative to the amount of money you spend putting into the project? So, with any of this stuff, we can talk more about anything you have questions about. But I'm just going to move on and let you ask questions as we go. So for the summative or outcomes piece, the big picture. You know what, Jennifer? Jennifer, I'm just going to apologize. I gave these slides to my editor, and being a really good editor, she used RJS. So everywhere I said rethinking, she fixed it for me. So I apologize.
And what Nancy's talking about, and maybe some of the facilitators are aware of this, is that we're really trying not to use RJS. We're trying to, if we want to shorten the name of the program, we're going to use the word simply rethinking. And just to interrupt you, I'm sorry, Nancy, really quickly, the purpose of that is because RJS doesn't really have a lot of meaning, but rethinking, even just that word has a little bit of meaning, and it results in an inquisitive of what does that mean. So it just helps with the conversation and to help maintain a sense of meaning of what the purpose of the project is. Okay, now to back up these, Nancy.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So for the outcomes piece, we're looking at the big picture of, can we have this program that really helps unemployed persons find jobs by putting together the right tools to help them cope with the emotional and social aspects of the job. So how we intend to do that, again, we have many research, but we're basically asking, what is the employment retention? And we are going to ask a lot of other interesting questions that kind of dig down into that too, like, how do outcomes differ between participants and what we call a comparison group? How do outcomes vary by demographics? Are we able to get UI benefits reduced by an average of 2 weeks? That sort of thing. So that's what we'll be asking. And how we're going to do that, I kind of foreshadowed, we will have a comparison group. That is not a control group. A control group is something different in that control group is more actively engaged and is not allowed to get the services. Instead, we are using as a comparison group people who interest in it but did not enroll. So we'll be looking at the differences between those two groups to help us see differences and to get an insight into the causal relationship between the services and what happens at the end. We can also be looking at the relationship between the intensity of services, meaning how much they attended, how many workshop hours they got in, and their outcomes. So we can really dig into some of this stuff to get some interesting results. So the third big chunk of our evaluation is the formative study. I think I mentioned this part you might be more interested in. So we're really looking at the overarching goal of rethinking to support statewide collaboration between the unemployment insurance system, the employment services, and the local workforce boards to shape those services delivered to job seekers in Oregon and their ongoing work system reforms. In this part of the study, this is really the process piece, as I mentioned. So we'll be looking at fidelity, meaning we have a plan, and how close do we stick to the plan? And why, when we have challenges, why do we go off from that plan? Or how do we get back on the plan? So we're really looking at the collaboration as kind of the unit of analysis of what we're looking at. And we're interested in changes related to service delivery because of we want to look at the delivery services, but also think about strategies that are used, the resources that are used, the policy and practices that are being impacted, and ultimately, how does the services that you're providing more fully address those barriers that people are encountering as they go to job search? So, back up. The way we're getting at this is to ask a lot of research questions, some of which are, how satisfied are the stakeholders? And then we like to look for interesting things like, were there unintended consequences? And we're looking at system-level changes. So how did the workforce offices and OED change how they interact? How is OED doing things? What are the lessons that are emerging from this program that we could share with people in similar positions in other places? So to answer these questions, we really, as with most projects, we're getting at it from a variety of perspectives. We don't just use one piece of information, one data stream to answer this, right? So we're looking at qualitative information. We're also looking at quantitative. We're looking at numbers. We're looking from different perspectives from stakeholders, so the leadership team, the workforce boards, the participants, facilitators. We want to get some direct input from those folks as well. And we would be doing that using interviews, surveys, focus groups. And so I think you're probably already wondering, so what? So what does this mean, right? What does this mean for you? What does this mean for the participants? So for them, they're really focused on the workshop, but the evaluation piece of this will be made evident to them in that we will be doing focus groups. We're going to do several this year and several next year. We're going to come in person, we're going to sit down and chat with people in a focus group setting. That's only going to be, like 10 people per focus group. So certainly we will miss, will just be a sampling of all the participants that come through the program. The other thing we're doing that they will see is the satisfaction survey. So at the close of the workshop, they do that survey, and then we're coming back to them 6 months later to get a perspective on almost the identical items and see if some of the results that they felt in the very short term are still making themselves evident 6 months later. And then, of course, through this process, they're also allowing us to use their administrative data to help understand their experience. So for the partners, we are actually going to do site visits every year. We will not be coming to every site every year, so I don't know when we'll see each of you yet. And when we come on a site visit, what we would like to do is sit down and do interviews with staff, or maybe small group interviews, get 2 or 3 people in the same room. We do want to talk to the facilitators. We want to talk to the workforce staff. And in that process, it's so valuable to have all these different stakeholder groups or different partners that we can actually speak to, because each one brings their own unique experience and perspective that cannot be duplicated. I can read reports, I can look at homework assignments even, but I don't know what that participant experience really is without really getting a little more input directly from them. And similarly, I can't know everything the facilitator has in their heads, and what they've experienced in the project, and what their hopes are, what their expectations are, what their disappointments are in the project, without actually speaking to them. So it's a really important piece of all the data pieces. The other thing for partners is when we come and we do focus groups, we will be developing all the materials for that. We'll be developing recruitment scripts, we'll be developing flyers, we'll be developing a guide that we use to actually conduct a focus group. But we are asking for facilitators to help connect us to participants, to do that outreach, because you have a personal connection. They don't know us, and so it wouldn't make sense for us to outreach to them. But for you to let them know that a focus group is available and to promote that would be exceptionally helpful. And so we would be doing that and coordinating with each workforce board locally. So I've got a couple other things before I'm going to pause here for a minute. I do want to let you know the other thing that you can expect out of the evaluation is we do a lot of reporting back. Every time we come on a site visit, we do a summary where we look at the themes and highlights from whatever we've done. So if we've done focus groups, interviews, observations, we summarize that. We give that back to Jennifer, and she's free to share those with all the partners. We also are doing annual reports. Most of those will be on the process piece, but the final report we can reflect on the process piece, but we'll certainly be talking about the final outcomes for the participants and the cost study as well. So one thing that's different for us as partners in this project than for you is we actually have a longer period of time where we're working. So when you get done with the workshops, we have another year, I think, in which time we allow those outcomes to mature, as I like to say. So we allow those quarters to go by so that we can actually report on the employment outcomes and retention outcomes for participants, after a certain number of quarters after they're done with the workshop. So we'll actually be working a little bit longer than you folks in order to get you the results that you need and are interested in. In all of these reports, we do aggregate the information, so we don't identify any individuals. We love to use quotes, but we use them carefully so that we don't telegraph who that person is. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. I think this is the really fun part of the webinar, because I'm going to tell you what we are finding so far in the workshop results. Very interesting stuff. So we're going to dig into that. I do want to just pause, as I say, for a minute. Chelsea, Marnie, Sherry, or Susan, or Jennifer, do you have any questions for me right now before I move forward? Okay, if you're asking me a question, you're on mute. So I'm going to carry forward. So what we've done so far, you've gotten quite a few workshops done. You've got quite a few to go. So we asked 243 participants of the workshops, all of them, to respond to the survey. Over 60% responded, which is a very good rate, actually. At that rate, to me, what that says is there's a high level of engagement by those participants in the workshop and in their experience. Now, we don't know, when you look at the results, what we don't know is how the other almost 40% feel about the workshop, right? So if they were systematically different, so for example, if they were those people who didn't answer the survey, if they were not as enthused or not as happy with the class, then we're really missing a big chunk, right? Then we would lose the opportunity to have a really full understanding or the full range of their experiences and find ways to keep improving. So the facilitators, you actually have a really important role in this part of the evaluation because you have a direct relationship with the participants. That means your encouragement to them to look for that email invitation from me can be very influential and can be very useful. So if they know it's coming and they know that you've encouraged them, I think that will help. And that is probably why we have over 60% now. But I would say there's never too much, never too much response. So I am throwing up some numbers on the board here, but what I want to tell you is we basically asked people a couple series of questions and asked them if they strongly disagreed, strongly agreed on these questions, right? So 1 is strongly disagree, and 5 is strongly agree. I want you to know this is one piece of this. The results are very positive. And what I've done is I just kind of ordered these by their rating. So, and we've done a lot of rating scales like this. When you get to 4.5 or above on a 5-point scale, that's really, really solid. It would be hard to get a perfect 5, right? Actually, I pulled these out and just put a little label on here to remind me the delivery. So the strongest pieces of this, I think, quantitatively, are on the delivery piece. So this is about you. This is about you. It's like the facilitator, help me understand the material, how they experienced the interactions. They felt respected. They felt involved. They felt your style was effective. So those are really strong indicators of the delivery piece of this project. So nice job. There's other good information here and good results. These are a few more of the pieces here. Again, same scale. These are ranging from 4.1 to 4.4. These are also very good results. And as I kind of noticed, these are more about the curriculum. So I'm already sort of clustering and clumping and thinking about these things in pieces right now. I've got the curriculum piece, the delivery piece. And this will certainly warrant more looking into. If you look at the bottom two, these are not bad results. 4.1 out of 5 points saying enough time is spent on the topic. That's a pretty solid positive. When you compare it to 4.6, you might be saying, well, I want that to be even higher. I want that to be closer to 4.6. But that one and the one about the activities, homework, and logs, they just had more variability in the answering. So in all of the question items you've just seen, in every one of them, I'm showing you an average, but the mode, meaning the most common answer given, was a 5, right? So that's pretty impressive. On these two, the most common answer given was a 4, so which means there's people who said a 3, a 4, a 5, somewhere between neutral and I agree or I strongly agree. So it's just a little more nuanced of what that means. I think that is something we want to keep an eye on and think about whether it's just kind of individual preferences around how much time you spend, or if there's something more programmatically you want to do differently with the time you have in the classroom. So these, this is kind of another set of questions. Again, we ask them if they agree or disagree. 5 is strongly agree. You can see there's some really strong results here. Particularly strong are indications of action and knowledge and motivation. Look at those top 3. They're all 4.5. They're following up on job leads. That's action. They understand why emotions matter, right? That's knowledge, that's awareness. and they're motivated to get the job they want. You want them to be motivated. So they're really, those things so far in these 143 classes are really coming through. And I think it reflects the intended goals of the project really nicely as well. So you got to love that. You know, you have some intended goals and some objectives, and the preliminary findings are you are definitely getting there. I'm looking at the bottom. Looking at the bottom one that says I can manage my emotions better. You know, managing one's emotions is a practice. It takes practice to get there. You don't just learn about it, have some awareness, and you're there, right? So I'm kind of liking that it's a 4.2, that it's not as strong as the others, because I feel like that maybe is a reflection that the answers are pretty honest. I'm checking my time here. Oh, we're doing fine. Okay. So, so I hope you're feeling these kudos coming through. I do have some more kudos for you, so hold on here. We asked people, would you recommend this Rethinking Job Search? And 97% said yes. Wow, that is huge. And we got 120 people to comment, put in their own words as to why they would. And that is also a strong indicator of engagement in your program, that they would take the time to actually write in that answer. They could have just clicked on the 4s or the 5s and moved on, but they didn't, so that's good. To me, that really just demonstrates a high level of engagement. So we are still sorting through. We're actively working on like coding the open-ended responses and kind of thematically organizing them as to what, what kind of volume of people said I'm motivated, or what kind of volume of people said, wow, this delivery is amazing. But I can tell you a few themes that I have pulled out myself. They are talking about having confidence, changing their thinking. They've learned skills that you intended them to learn, like being able to see something from a new perspective. People talked about being hopeful or having their morale improved from this project. And a couple people mentioned this would be great for everybody. You don't even have to be a job seeker. That this is just teaches good skills that people could benefit from. And one of them said, actually, there was a person who said, no, I would not recommend this. And then when I her answers, I just love this. She said, well, it'd be great for keeping a job, but it's not great for finding a job. So I don't think that's really a bad result, right? So I have some more kudos for you. So, here's just a few examples of some quotes that I pulled out of the workshop survey. They're saying some really great things. You're off to a great start with this project. What I want to do is maybe do a little bit more in thinking about the interpretation and have you kind of come along with me in that interpretation. So it seems to be working, right? That's one of our questions. Is this working? The rest is, why is it working? What's working on this? And so I'm kind of looking at the open ends, and I'm looking at the scaled items with an eye toward, what are people really making note of, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to dig into the specific features of this intervention. We're going to look at the delivery. We're going to look at the curriculum. We're going to look at skill attainment. And these survey results really start to help to fill this in, both with the ratings that we just talked about and also with the narrative. I do want to show you a couple pieces of narrative. So, like, for example, in delivery, one of the comments was, this is a direct quote, the workshop provides a safe speak, and our facilitator was magnificent at non-judgmental responses. So that's really about the delivery, right? Here's an example of comments that really speak to the curriculum. There's good tools and ideas in this material. Another quote from skill attainment. So, this person said, it helps me to be more mindful and more aware. So that's a new skill that was a core objective of the curriculum, right? So, these are the kinds of things that we'll be looking at. Now, here's an interesting comment. They said, I think it's worthwhile, and I think it will get better as time passes. Well, what does that mean, right? So, our job as evaluators on the team is to provide this value by looking at this, this data stream, these numbers, the narrative, to talk to you, to talk to other stakeholders, to look at the administrative data, and to figure out, is it working? Why is it working? What needs to be strengthened? What would it be just as good if you changed X? Would it be just as good if you dropped Y? Would it be just as good if you had 8 sessions? So those are the kinds of questions that we are thinking about as we look at this. There was a couple comments about people saying, who this would be good for. So we've got everything from somebody who said, well, this would be great for people, right? And there was somebody else who said, everybody could use this. Everybody could benefit from this. So will the program outcomes be better for some than for others? So we are interested in looking at perceptions, like these narrative pieces I'm just looking at, and looking at feedback from the staff. But we'll also look at the bottom line individual outcomes, and we can start looking at those in terms of, they vary in terms of the characteristics of the person. So I'm getting some feedback, excuse me, on the phone. Can you all mute your phones? Okay. So part of what we explore in this work is
Nancy, I'm having trouble hearing you.
okay.
This is Susan.
Yeah.
I think your microphone cut out.
Thank you for letting me know. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. And I think I just lost all that background noise, so that might help too. So thank you for letting me know. So, we will be exploring, whether there's ways to improve the program, what pieces are working, and so with an understanding of what's working and why it's working, we can keep giving information to the team to help inform that continuous improvement. So we'll be looking at, you have a plan. Are you going according to the plan? What do the results look like? So that kind of fidelity piece also helps inform. Really. So you know what? I changed my mind. I am getting more on the line. Can everybody mute their phones? Okay. How's that? Can you hear me now? Okay. So what was I saying? Oh, so we're just getting hints right now with this preliminary data of what could be interesting. People are starting to talk already about, this is really great, and I need this before I go to this other workshop, and I could use your help to know what those workshops are. It may be, one person said, wow, you should more aggressively market the benefits. I didn't know how great this project was going to be. So we can start thinking about those things already. And here's another person who's asking the same questions I was asking. Could it be in a different format? Would it be just as useful? So I'm not saying jump up and change anything. I'm just saying these are the kinds of questions that will help us really assess the full value of the project, the program, and why it's successful. Because I think we're going to get more and more news. You guys are off to a fantastic start. So we will be looking at more and more of this information. You guys have a lot more people to enroll, so we will be making this information available every time we do an annual report. Be able to get that feedback. I know you also are getting feedback. We're doing kind of rolling up feedback from sites into packages as well, so you might be able to tap into that. That's what I've got that I wanted to talk about in terms of overview and the preliminary results. I'm interested in your impressions of the preliminary results. I'm interested in your questions about the evaluation goal. And I'm interested if somebody could actually start off by somebody telling me what is the foundational skills workshop and what is the roadmap.
Nancy, this is Susan. I do have a question, but your audio cut out again.
Okay. You know what? Every once in a while, our whole phone system rings. I wonder if that's interfering with this. Can you hear me now?
I can. It's a little choppy, but I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry.
So I'm going to proceed with my comment and question. I am so impressed by the preliminary results, and I just want to congratulate all the facilitators on a job well done. And this is being supported by, we're in the middle of making monitoring and fidelity check visits, and I've done 3, and I can say without a doubt that what I've observed is borne out in these results. So it's just really, really exciting. So now for my question, Nancy, what is the usual response rate that you've found to an online follow-up survey? Because I think our response rate is quite high.
Yeah, Susan, it is pretty high. I mean, I was happy with that. I would love to see even more. And I have to say, there's an answer. Oh, hold on. I'm going to possibly disappoint you with an answer of it really depends. But I have seen response rates vary greatly, and I can tell you what I think they're related to. So the response rate is always a reflection of whether people think the topic is interesting at all, whether they feel emotionally connected to the topic, whether they think you are a legitimate entity to be asking them questions, whether they care enough about you as an organization to even share their thoughts. So those are some really important indicators or reasons for whether people respond. And then beyond that, the response rate is very much impacted by the language that you use in there, whether they can relate to it, whether it's too complicated, and the length of the survey. So we certainly went to great effort to make the survey very accessible in terms of its length and in terms of its language.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, please. Who's this?
This is Chelsea in Oregon City. So I guess I'm curious, who gets the survey? Is it anybody who registers or anybody who takes that initial eligibility survey?
This survey is given to people who are enrolled in the workshops, and it's sent to them on the last day of their class.
So so when you say enrolled, is that enrolled, like maybe Jennifer can chime in, enrolled in like iTrack or enrolled on the website?
So the survey, you can hear me?
Yeah.
The survey is sent to those who are registered on Rethinking Job Search. So that's the database that Public Policy Associates is using as the contact information, is what's sent in there. So a really quick caveat, this is a reminder that if a participant registers on Rethinking Job Search and for some reason doesn't show up on that day and doesn't participate, we're all working really hard on making sure that that list is kept up to date. So maybe go back after each of your first workshops and just delete participants or job seekers who didn't participate on that first day, and that way we'll avoid sending it to somebody who didn't participate in the workshop. But essentially, the goal is to send it to anybody who becomes the technical definition for participant, which is they showed up on that first day of workshop.
Okay, that's good to know. I haven't been cleaning that list up. Is that something you want us to do, or is that something you're going in and doing?
I've been trying to a little bit, but it's a bit of a struggle for me. So if you can all help, that'd be really helpful.
That's fine. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
And then when I announce it on that last day, people have already received it. Should they have gotten it before their last day?
Yeah, we launch it so that it does come on the last day. I'm sorry, Chelsea. What was your question around that?
Oh, I was just wondering if that was how it was supposed to be. So when on the last day I say, hey guys, you should be expecting this email. It'd be really helpful. It's not going to come back to me, so be honest. And they always say, oh yeah, we've already received it. Mm-hmm. So before they've showed up to that last day, they've received it.
Yeah, so that's right. So the invitation is launched on the last day. So when you remind them, they actually should have received it. And so you can say, check your spam filter or whatever. And I kind of hope, in my own mind, I'm hoping that they see the invitation, but they don't answer it until after those last couple hours, because they've got a couple more hours under their belt, to reflect.
Sure.
But we're afraid if we send it any later, they won't be as motivated. So it has to be really, it has to be really salient to them, right? So it has to be like, oh, sure, today I'm still in the workshop, and so they can fill it out immediately while they're still thinking of it.
Sure. Yeah, some of them say, oh, I already did it, and then some of them are like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll keep an eye out.
Okay. So thank you for those reminders. I appreciate it, Chelsea. So who has roadmaps to success?
Nancy, this is Susan. I do not believe this is a ResCare, one of the contractor for Insights regions, and I do not believe that Emily is on the call. Is that correct, Jennifer? And she would know more about it, but what it is the, in fact, we were just talking about this yesterday, it's kind of the external things you do to get a job. So it is working on having a good resume, it is working on interviewing, it is working on your appearance, so your dress, and as opposed to Rethinking, which is really working more on the internal. And I would imagine the foundational skills workshop is, I don't know if that's a series or what region that's from, but I would imagine it's probably pretty much the same thing.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. So that, what do you think about that? That kind of makes sense that people would benefit from having Rethinking first before they have a kind of a job search prep workshop.
I can answer that, but I'd really like to hear from others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that feedback from people that they've said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I took this right away. And then they've gone on to do more of the hard skill workshops.
So as the curriculum developer and facilitator of both the internal and the external, I can honestly say that some of the people who I observed going through the external were too shattered from their job loss to really be able to focus on those external skills. Shattered is a very, oh, that's quite the word. I don't know if I meant that, but they're depressed, they're, they're emotionally messed up. And so I think dealing with the internal first is probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask the facilitators, Marnie, Sherry, Chelsea, what do you expect people will say to us in these future surveys in terms of what is the most important part of the workshop for them. You know, we asked them 4, I think, great open-ended questions. Would you recommend it? What's most important? What could be improved? How has this impacted you? What do you think they would say is the most important?
This is Marnie from Bend. I'm kind of in a unique situation, and I don't have a lot of feedback to give, unfortunately. I haven't been able to have a successful cohort, so I'm probably not the right person to answer your question. So I'll cede that to the other facilitators.
Thank you, Marnie.
I think kind of some of the themes that I've been hearing are like a sense of control and empowerment. So like the idea like, you know, I can handle the things that come my way. So like maybe some resiliency. I don't know if those are the words that they would use, but I think that's kind of the general theme. And then some of the like, for lack of a better term, like hidden curriculum stuff. So like staying on a schedule, having somewhere to go in the morning, that type of thing I think is really beneficial. And then the normalizing their experience. So, you know, I had one guy talk about, you know, like in my group I had, you know, welders to, you know, software engineers and, you know, everything in between. And he said, wow, we all come from such different places, but we're experiencing the same thing.
Sorry.
So I think that realizing you're not alone in this. And then also, yeah, that group piece, you know, like the staying out of isolation during job loss. So I think those are the things that I observe as being the most impactful. I don't know if impactful is a word, actually.
It is. Yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Chelsea. Gary, did you want to add to that?
So you need to disconnect this phone?
Yeah, as soon as they're done getting everything through.
Okay, let me just check with my
Okay, I think Carrie's multitasking on us. Okay, it happens. So the other thing I did, the other thing I noticed from some of the commentary was very interesting. Two things. One is, you know, we saw a lot of reflection of the intended outcomes. So people talked about just helping them with their risky behavior, their confidence, their motivation. So that's good. You know, they offered up those types of words without us prompting, which is very helpful, and you know, helps reflect that the objectives you're trying to get at are being met. The other thing that kind of came up a couple times was people were starting to talk about relationship building and camaraderie. So I think this goes back to what Chelsea just mentioned in terms of normalizing their experience. So people are really getting a lot out of knowing they're not alone and having those people in the same boat talk to and to, you know, to share their experience.
Can I interject? This is Marcos.
Hi, Marcos.
Yeah, I've been listening. As I went through one of the cohorts, I think that what it came out was the idea of collaboration and that, you know, and support and cooperation, and but also the locus of control, that I control my actions and where I'm going, and I'm going to go and get those interviews and job offers versus externalities.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting.
So I think that was an indirect impact of the curriculum, and they wouldn't talk about, you know, thinking errors or risky behaviors, but this is what happened with me as I finished the not even as I finished, by the third week, people were talking like that.
That's really interesting.
I might take just a second to introduce Marcos to everybody. Marcos is a new facilitator. We're working on getting him trained at the beginning of next month. But he started, so he's joining us on the webinar today. He's been doing a little bit of work trying to get acquainted with the website and doing some follow-up work with the participants that came out of the Beaverton Hillsborough Center for WorkSource. So he's going to be taking over that workshop series. But Marcos, thanks for being on and thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone.
Yeah.
Glad you could join us.
Yes.
So at the beginning of the call, I kind of oriented people to the fact that you know, we're one of the partners on the team, and we're really focused completely on the evaluation piece of the project. So I just gave a really short overview as to what we're doing. We are looking at the cost benefits or cost effectiveness of the project. We're looking at the outcomes of individual participants in terms of their employment and retention. But we're also looking at the like, is this project unfolding as planned? Is there, you know, what kinds of challenges come up? How are those challenges resolved? And what can we learn from that that we can share with others and that can inform the work that you're doing right now? So Marcos, the other thing I covered, I don't know how much you heard of this. Did you see the participant results from their survey when they finished the workshops?
I've seen some of the comments, but I don't know if it's the right report, the one that I saw.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the comments were really tremendous. We've got 97% of the people who answered the survey said they would recommend Rethinking Job Search. It's really,
fantastic.
Really fantastic. Yeah, you guys are off to an absolutely fantastic start. So Marcos, the bar is very high.
I know the comments that they're read about joys and feedback when I call it. Yeah, it is high.
Yeah.
But that's good.
Jennifer talked about there may be on the I don't know what you call it, the website where we're blogging. I don't know if that's the right word, but a thread in there about evaluation. I will be on the website looking at that, answering any questions. You folks are always welcome to call me with your questions about what we're doing or when you're going to see us, that sort of thing. I'm very interested in kind of tracking on your questions as things unfold. And I'm wondering if you have any comments on so far when people enroll but they don't actually go through the workshop. Do you have a sense of like why people drop out before they even really get started?
I have some people call me and say, like this last week I started a new group on Monday, and she called me the week prior and said that she had an interview during that first day. So she, you know, I told her that if she was still job seeking in August, she could join that one, but I couldn't let her miss the first day and then continue. So I'm guessing like scheduling. I usually have about 2 that don't show up, I think is the average that I've been seeing.
That's really good to know. So take note of that, Jennifer. An average of 2.
I have a person today that was really interesting in the program, but was going to miss that first day, so it's kind of the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good.
And the other thing could be that from the time that they registered, maybe a couple of weeks out, and you know they get a job or something else happens.
Yep.
I have
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna move on to a question or something that I had. So if you wanted to finish that up, Nancy, feel free.
No, I was just going to ask more questions. So go ahead, Jen.
Okay. I wanted to just quickly touch on what Nancy just said about the link in Rethinking Connect, which is our back-end side of the site that we are using to connect with each other.
I have a code, but I don't know what it is.
We are, hey Marcos, can you throw your phone on mute real quick? We have a forum started that just got started today called Evaluation, and that's where Nancy will be able to interact with the facilitators. And actually, any of our workforce partners are welcome to participate in that conversation, to ask questions, to share information, to provide comments on their experience just in that back end. And I'll also take the data as of today that Nancy shared with us, and I'll throw it up there as well. So you'll be able to refer to that data anytime, and that's where you can find it, is in that evaluation thread under Rethinking Connect. So I wanted to add that. And I just really quickly wanted to touch on, I wanted to just let you know that the meaningfulness out of this, the data that we're getting, the comments that we're getting that Nancy shared with us today, that's the stuff that really helps us share the story of what Rethinking Job Search is. And so I wanted you to be able to hear some of those results, to understand the purpose of the evaluation, because we know that we're asking the facilitators to do a little more work than you would normally do in other workshop series or other workshops for the workforce centers. So I know that you're being asked a little bit more of you, but that's because we get actually really great data out of it, and we get to provide this for public policy associates, which turns it into a really rich story for us. In addition to that, you provide success stories every 6 months, which is a fantastic tool as well. So those are being completed right now, and you'll be able to find those under the success stories thread where you've all submitted them. So please feel free to read each other's success stories. That's where we get to, and feel free to share with other partners to whatever degree you would like to. And then I did have a question for the facilitators. I've heard a little bit about this, but I'd like to have a little comment on, if I can ask, what have you noticed has been the level of engagement with participants once they've completed workshops? And do you see that they have an interest in staying engaged to some degree, and do you think that there's going to be some interest in connecting with public policy associates as we start to plan for those focus groups later this year?
I think, obviously the ones who completed the workshops are going to be the ones who are the most engaged with me in terms of follow-ups. And yeah, I mean, I think that I could connect you with people who would be willing to do it. I think that the people who are going to be the most engaged with me are going to be the people who think the highest of the program. So I don't know if that's important or not. So I'm happy to help in any way in that regard.
Do you all find that the participants stay connected with each other after the workshop series? Do you have any sense of that?
My first two groups exchanged information. Like, I never prompt them to do that because, that's not my role. But the first two groups, yeah, they exchanged information. I don't think that they really stayed connected, though. I think a couple of them, made friends. So I think maybe a couple of them still do. But even when they exchanged information, I don't think that they really engage with one another, from what I sense at least.
Chelsea, you may be the only one that's really on the call that's best to answer that question. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Jennifer, that reminds me of another project where they weren't necessarily trying to make a peer experience out of their services, but it really evolved that way. That was some of the most important or richest part of what the participants were experiencing. So we're kind of tracking on that in another project as well. I would like to comment on the focus group piece. I think you're right in large part that some of the people who would come to the focus group will be the most happiest with the program, but we kind of take that into account, and we kind of think of it as this is kind of like the highest value the project can offer when you get the people who are really happy and really motivated to come into that room and have a conversation. On the other hand, I should take note, we have had people come into a focus group and just complain about a program. So you can get a range of responses. So it's always interesting, that's for sure. But having them in the room allows us to kind of dig into that a little bit and get a little more into their brain about what exactly they were finding valuable or not valuable, that sort of thing. I'm wondering, are you finding that the participants, from your perspective or what they've said to you, are they finding the amount of time per session to be just right, or too long, or too short?
I haven't really had any feedback about the time, like the 2 hours. I think the 4 weeks initially is like a hard sell. I think people are like, oh, 4 weeks, I don't know if I can commit to that. So, you know, that's always kind of a difficult piece. But then once we get in there, it flies by, and they're like, whoa, wait, what? It's over? Okay. But it's, in terms of like the 2 hours, I think it's pretty spot. In my opinion, it's pretty spot on. I think any less wouldn't be enough time, and any more, I think we'd just be dragging.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Is that Chelsea again?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chelsea.
No problem.
Appreciate feedback on that.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if I can, Jennifer, if I can ask a couple more questions.
Oh yes, please do. Feel free. It's all yours.
And Marcus, if I put you on the spot, you can just say so, and we'll go on to some other question. But I'm wondering, as the new person on the block, what is your biggest concern about walking into this new role, this new work?
Sure. I think that the marketing material needs some improvement. I'm finding that it's kind of similar to every other program in some ways, in that, you know, we need to get people excited. One of the materials that I thought that was pretty good and explained the program really well, more than the facilitator talking in some ways. There's a 4-minute video that explains the program, but it's directed mainly to facilitators. But on the other hand, it does a really good job of, in a very soft way, of highlighting the benefits and how to engage. Talks about the registration process, and I think that brings things to life instead of having a PowerPoint or handing out flyers. In addition to the flyers, kind of like I see them as a collateral to something that's more powerful. not even the, I took a look at the testimonies, for instance, those videos, and I thought that they were pretty sad in some ways. I mean, they were talking about stories, but, you know, where's the upbeat? That's what I think that, if you're asking me what I'm concerned about, the program itself, I'm not, because I've seen what it does. But it's how to get people excited. Besides talking, you know, I'll talk to them and all of that, but people are visual. People are, you know what I mean? Especially in a time that we use technology quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah, that kind of resonates with that one comment I found where somebody said, you should market this more. I didn't know it was going to be this great.
I was even going to ask permission to use that video. I think that, but it's not really directed to participants, to customers. It's more to facilitators in the resource area.
Yeah, so Marcus, I'm going to speak to that really quickly. It is that the one you're talking about is intended for our staff, for our partners and our staff to understand what the project is, so they can have a common language around it.
Yeah.
And it's really solid for that. We do have another video that is intended for the job seeker, and I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. It's actually not accessible until someone has completed the survey and then gone into the registration page. And on that the very first registration page is a video that explains the workshop. So I might have another look at that video and see if it's appropriate to use more as a marketing tool, and I can follow up with you after that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And everything else, I feel comfortable. Partners over here are on board. They have a good understanding of about the program. So that's that's about it, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. So on the flip side, what are you most excited about as you get into your first one?
Oh, well, I've seen the impact. So I'm walking into something that I know that works.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So when we, you know, we'll have other opportunities in the future to talk to each other, and I really want, I want the facilitators to know that, you know, we are so excited about this project, and we're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to ask a lot about, you know, what's working. We're going to ask a lot about what are challenges, and don't be alarmed if I ask you, you know, like what's not working or what's, you know, because we learn so much from what's not working that it's always very valuable to talk about that stuff. I think it's clear right now that we're going to have a lot of good news to talk about. So not to worry that it'll be a one-sided for sure. So Jennifer, I was wondering in these quarterly webinars, what other types of topics do you have lined up to talk about, or do you know that far in advance?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are still working on figuring out exactly what would be helpful for facilitators. So what we did for the first quarterly webinar was send out a survey monkey asking, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? What will be helpful? So we may do that again. I have interest also, and I'm trying to decide if this is going to be the in-person training that we do this at, or if this is going to be a webinar. Probably the in-person training, though. But I would like to eventually teach the facilitators how to schedule their own workshops and manage that scheduling system, because it can be done. It just needs to be taught. So that's one of the topics, to really engage them more with the website and giving them a little more control over the scheduling piece of that. And beyond that, I think we're still trying to figure out maybe some topics around recruitment and participation, as far as like what Marcos was saying, how best do we get people excited about this? So we might have a conversation around that. And I have a feeling that the webinars in the future may involve a couple of topics, just based on what some of the challenges are that facilitators are experiencing at the time, or what are the things that they're excited about. So I think it's really going to be dependent on what the experience is in that moment.
And this is Susan. I'd like to chime in. Chelsea, when we met a couple of weeks ago, you had a great idea that we might explore. And I will paraphrase it, but maybe you can make sure that I'm on the right track. It had to do with really working with the facilitators to work on how to manage the partnerships or manage all the stakeholders, because there are multiple people involved in this thing. It's the OED employees, it's their coworkers. In the WIOA arena, it is, of course, the participants, although we kind of have the participant management, if there's any of that needed, down. But Chelsea, do you want to maybe clarify or make it more clear what I'm babbling about?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I've noticed is that, there's a lot of stakeholders, right? So I have, my immediate supervisor, my organization, and then, working with like the workforce staff and then the workforce board, and everybody kind of has a different stake in the game. And so kind of navigating that, I suppose, and understanding and managing the expectations from each partnership. Like what can I do for each one of those entities to better build the partnership, better communicate what it is we're doing, kind of in terms of what they need, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe we can develop some best practices by, we can maybe talk to everybody beforehand and put some things together that we can present in a, discuss in a webinar.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great idea.
Oh, well, thank you.
So I've been asking a lot of the questions today. So I do want to let the facilitators know. I know not everybody's on the call today, but if you've got questions, feel free to call me. And I'm wondering if anybody has questions right now about the survey or about us coming to see you or anything with the evaluation.
I would like to add that if you're going to, if you have interest in connecting with public policy associates for questions around the evaluation or the results or anything you're seeing, unless it's something you need to connect with them directly and privately, please do that on the evaluation link under Rethinking Connect so that we can all participate in that conversation and all have the same information.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That's a great reminder. Great reminder. So we're going to start using that evaluation forum.
Nancy, this is Susan. I just really want to thank you for this very clear presentation. I know that the evaluation design report is about 500 pages long. Is that an exaggeration? Maybe a slight exaggeration. But it's very thorough, very lengthy. I think the information you put together really did a nice, thorough overview. So I appreciate it so much.
No, you're very welcome.
And if it was bad news, I probably wouldn't be as happy. But it's such excellent. The results are so excellent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, seriously, kudos. I don't think I've seen anything lately that said, 97% happy, so happy we recommend it to somebody. So really, this is just coming off tremendously. I'm very, very impressed. And like I said, it'll be my job to do, further interpretation as to, why that is, what's working, It's always really tempting at the start of a project for people to start reinventing it already, and I don't mean to have, reinvent anything. It's more like just kind of digging into the whys. Why is it working? So, nice job.
Well, if there are no other questions.
I was going to say, if anybody actually wanted to know more about the evaluation, I could go on and on. So, I obviously, nobody wants me to go on and on about that, but if you ever did, you can call me and I will condense the 300-page tome for you.
Nancy has a lot of skill and knowledge up there in her head around how this is working and exactly what it's going to look like. I'm very talented at what she does. And such a wonderful partner. The communication is fantastic. So very responsive. If you want to connect with her, please do. Feel free to CC me if you email her or connect with her yourself. If there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and say I really appreciate, Nancy. I want to reiterate what Susan just said, how fantastic this presentation was. And so thank you very much for taking the time to put it together and for connecting with us in this way. And we're really excited about continued engagement with Public Policy Associates moving forward. And if you feel like you want to share this webinar with anyone, again, it's going to be on Rethinking Connect under webinars in the resources page. So that's where you'll be able to find it. And I'll send out a reminder that it'll be posted there. All right, and I want to do one last reminder to everyone that works in the Workforce Centers of Confidentiality. Brush up on all the required processes around making sure that our participants are kept safe and their data and their information is kept safe. I'm going to try to remind that every webinar. I realize that maybe the training is either annual or you get it once at the beginning when you're hired on and then you don't hear about it again. So this is just a quick reminder to brush up on that, brush up on the standards that you have, make sure that we're implementing the best practice that the practice that we've set for us. So brush up on the standards around implementation. You're all doing a fantastic job. Our fidelity checks and our monitoring is going really well. So it's a really great opportunity to connect with you more personally and to see how you do your work. So thanks everyone for being on the call today. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it very much. And we'll connect again next quarter.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
it was great.
So glad I could talk to you today. Thank you.